Hello and welcome to the second episode of my 3-part rewrite series of the 2014 Michael Bay produced Ninja Turtles movie. In the second part, I am going to go over the first half of the new plot I have constructed around this movie. Keep in mind, I am going to try my best to stick with the original framework of the movie. The key word, of course, is try. But without further ado, let's get started. So unlike in the original version, the first 5 minutes will take place in the past where a young April is spending time with the turtles in her father's research lab at TGRI. Her father in the meantime is taking notes until he is interrupted by a co-worker who informs him that the progress on the turtles has been taking too long and has been deemed a failure by their boss, Eric Sachs. April's father sighs and then just asks his colleague to give him the time and date of when to euthanize the turtles. April, still in the room, overhears them and, thinking quickly, gathers all the turtles in a glass tray. While this is going on, the colleague then tells April's dad that there is something else he has to tell him, but he can't do it in here while they are still in the lab. April's dad is initially suspicious but agrees to meet his co-worker after their shift is over. Only then does he notice that April and the turtles are gone. The scene then cuts to April running through the facility where she passes several other animals being experimented on. Once she escapes the facility, she is chased by a security guard who causes her to run faster until she trips and drops the glass tray on a nearby sewer drain, only being able to watch helplessly as the turtles fall down into the sewer while the security guard drags her off, and then title drop. After that, we skip past the part where April is doing her reporting while jumping on a trampoline, and instead we jump right into the sequence where she is spying on an illegal transaction at the docks. Now, instead of the Foot Clan like in the original movie, this transaction will be committed between a street gang known as the Purple Dragons and an unknown party. After a brief moment where it looks like April is spotted, the turtles make their move. Now, instead of one of them picking up and swatting a whole group of them with a shipping container, the group will fall silent as they hear a faint squeaking noise, only to panic when they see someone drop a container above them as it was untied from the crane. Then the lights are taken out, and all April can hear are shouts of confusion, fear, and sounds of fighting. When the sounds have all died down, she walks out and pulls out her torch to see all the gang members beaten and bruised on the floor. At first she is in mild shock until she hears something in the distance. Quickly she rushes to see what it is, only to barely be able to catch a glimpse of what seemed to be a humanoid figure jumping over the fence in the distance. After that, we cut to April interviewing one of the Purple Dragon members in prison who was at the scene with her. Unfortunately, she can't get much out of him and just leaves in frustration. As she leaves the doors to the prison, Vern is outside waiting impatiently and reminds her that they are running late to the office. April tells him to shut up and they drive off. At the Channel 6 office, April's boss, Bernadette Thompson, is patiently waiting for any updates about her story. April informs her that she hasn't made much progress, which disappoints her boss. April hastily adds that she saw what appeared to be a vigilante who disrupted the business transaction of the Purple Dragons, and that given enough time, she could track him down. Bernadette is hesitant, but reluctantly gives April another chance, accompanied by a stern warning, saying that if she barges this up again, at best she will be demoted or at worst fired. April nods and walks towards her office, but not before catching a news conference held by Eric Sachs playing on one of the office TVs. In this conference, he announces that this company from now on will begin to transition from a genetics company to one that will specialize in spaceflight and interstellar research, and thus will be rebranded from TGRI to TCRI. Then near the end of his announcement, he reveals that he plans to make a sizable donation to the New York City police force to help them with the growing crime wave. Once the broadcast has ended, April glares at the screen for one last time before walking off. The next scene will take place in April's apartment, where she stares at a conspiracy board on her bedroom wall that shows that she believes that Eric Sachs was in some way responsible for the lab accident that killed her father, which is another major change to the original movie, since in that version April was unaware of this until Splinter told her. The reason for this change will be to fix one of the other problems people tend to have with this movie, which is that April is more of a focused character instead of the Turtles, which is also a common criticism of the live-action Transformers movies, which were actually directed by Michael Bay. However, as you can see, in my opinion, you can easily fix it by just giving her a stronger motivation early on. But moving on. After she finishes her research, she decides to go to bed, where the camera then zooms in on the part of a conspiracy board that directly links Eric Sachs to the Foot Clan. The scene then transitions to Eric Sachs in his office, where we learn that in exchange for his generous donation to the NYPD, Sachs is then granted access to the various police reports. Once he is done, he sends a message to his secretary informing them that he would like to arrange a meeting with an old colleague. We then cut to the scene where Orokosagi, aka the Shredder, is training. Once his opponent is beaten, Karai enters the room and informs him that Eric Sachs would like to see him. Eric Sachs enters and informs him about the recent string of attacks performed by the vigilante who has disrupted many of his illegal business transactions, and offers him a job to take care of him. The next scene takes place in the New York City subway, at night, where the hostage situation is staged. Unlike in the original version, the scene where the turtles are witnessing it unfold on the news is cut. Instead, it will be April who discovers the events on the news and rushes over. Another big difference is that Karai will not be there, and instead one of the hired gunmen will threaten the vigilante to come out of hiding, or they will start to execute the hostages. Then, the scene where the turtles kill the lights and pick up the hired guns one by one plays out. Unlike in the original, however, the turtles will then be attacked by foot ninjas, which gives them much more trouble. Eventually, they appear to win, and then just as quickly, they vanish, leaving behind only the unconscious hostage takers. Meanwhile, April arrives just when the hostages are released, and then quickly catches a glimpse of a familiar humanoid figure leaping above one of the rooftops. The following events play out almost exactly the same as the official version, with April climbing up the fire escape, and in her desperation to finally make some progress on her story, she forgets to turn off the flash of her camera and is caught by the turtles. This will also be our first good look at the turtles in the entire movie. The only other major difference in this version of the scene is there aren't going to be any creepy lines from Michelangelo.
Can you feel my shell tightening?
We can hear you.
Oh, and we're teenagers, but we can still have adult conversations. So guys, if it wasn't already obvious with that girl, dibs.
With that said, I am going to keep the scene where Michelangelo tries and fails to calm April down by taking off his mask, which only causes her to faint, because I actually think that's kind of funny. After she recovers from her initial shock, the turtles introduce themselves promptly and hand over her phone back. She thanks them until she finds out that all the data has been scrapped, which makes her incredibly angry, and she starts yelling at them. Leonardo gives her a stern warning to not follow them any further, revealing that they know where she lives and her full name. April stays quiet for a bit and then finally pretends to agree. After that, the turtles leave. When the turtles arrive back at their lair, Michelangelo makes an offhand remark that the name April O'Neil sounds familiar. The others initially dismiss his claim, saying that's because they've seen her on the news, but deep down they all feel the same way. One more difference is that the turtles in this version don't wake up Splinter, and at the same time as this is happening, April arrives at her apartment and she throws a massive fit over having several months of work erased in just one night. It gets so bad that her neighbor tells her to shut up. After that, she finally calms down by screaming into a pillow. Now almost completely relaxed, she glances at her conspiracy board and her eyes fall on the newspaper article that covered the lab fire that killed her father, which causes all the memories with her and the turtles to flood back. The next day at the Channel 6 office, April is nervous about telling her boss that more than half of her work was deleted. This will lead to a scene with a tense build-up and then a comedic release as her boss asks April to cover for a different reporter who was supposed to attend another conference held by Eric Sachs but got sick at the last moment. Next, the movie will cut to the turtles' lair where they are having breakfast, and at first it's all casual banter until Splinter calmly enters the room and they all go silent. Splinter instantly knows something is off, but he decides to play dumb for a while for his own amusement. After they have finished their breakfast, Splinter orders them to do some balance and concentration exercises. During this sequence, the turtles guess that Splinter is already onto them and make a silent vow to each other to not reveal what they've been up to. This scene is pretty much identical to the original, including the part where Michelangelo finally breaks when Splinter offers him a supposedly legendary pizza. Next, instead of April driving towards Sachs' estate, the movie will cut to her attending Sachs' party where he announces that TCRI is scheduled to finish finish and launch their first rocket at the end of the year. On top of that, he announces that he also plans to cover the medical expenses of all the people who got injured by the hostage situation in the subway. After he is finished, April then starts to interview him. The interview starts off polite enough at first, until April starts asking more and more invasive questions, until they both start to act more and more passive-aggressive towards each other, until she is told to leave by a bodyguard. After this, she gets back to her apartment where she does her best to recover as much of her research. But like in the original movie, Donatello hacks her laptop and tells her where and when to meet up, if she would like to.